I would arrive at something that I would try to make a purpose or try it on for size. And it was like, I was always afraid that I didn't have it right, that it was somehow off, right? But the thing is, when I finally found it, it was obvious, it clicked. I was like, nope, no questions asked. This is it. So a lot of soul searching and discovery. And it's not like I just spent 5 different days or, 5 different instances thinking about this. This was like a long journey of like introspection and discovery to ultimately land here. But I would say, once you find it, you got it, right? Like Simon Sinek style. Once you find your purpose, like you just know it, and it's an inviolable truth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesdays Off podcast. My guest today is Ab DeWeese. He is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and AI educator, and the founder of Good Automation, an engineering services company solving complex applied physics and automation problems across software, hardware, and data. With a background in theoretical physics, mathematics, software, and electrical engineering, Ab brings hands-on experience applying AI and advanced technology across finance, education, and mission-critical industries, including medical devices, aerospace defense, and oil and gas. He is known for distilling gray area complexity into clear, actionable solutions that improve productivity and decision-making. That sounds like assumption busting to me, and that's something we have in common. Founded in 2013, after an unconventional early career as a ski bum and lift operator in Vail, Ab's work is driven by lifelong curiosity and practical problem solving. He's based in Dallas, Texas, where he enjoys time with his family, practicing Brazilian jiu-jitsu and connecting with fellow entrepreneurs. He also runs a dad's group, which is how I met him. Ab, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome, Stavros. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's a pleasure. So, Ab, sometimes you describe yourself as a polymath, or sometimes others have described you as a polymath. You have a wide array of interests. Everything from kind of complex math and physics to just the human elements of just being a dad. You know what I mean? Like there's so much that you do in your life. So what's really calling out to you right now is like the important thing you're doing, and why is it important to you?
Man, thank you for the question. It's kind of overwhelming. I love to learn and teach, right? That's my purpose. My purpose in this life is to learn and to teach. And I feel so lucky to have finally found that. I've known it my whole life, but to have been able to articulate it. I was able to articulate that for the first time this summer.
Wow.
From here to learn and to teach. I love to learn. I love to teach, in pretty much every capacity possible. And, it's how I thrive, and it's what I'm here to do.
I think I share that with you, man. I've always had this gift for taking really complicated things and figuring out how to make them simple and kind of communicate them to people. And it brings me great joy. And sometimes people don't even want to know. They're like, enough. I don't want to know, but I'm imagining my kids right now kind of going, all right, Dad, I don't want to learn another thing.
Yeah, it's too much. Yeah. I get plenty of eye rolls from my teenagers. So it's like the art is knowing when to stop, shoving ideas down their throat. And I find that the older they get, the more I need to back off of that. And then if I do, every now and then they open up, and I got to be ready to give and deliver at that point. But otherwise kind of respect their autonomy, their little budding autonomy. Right.
So what was it that happened this summer that helped you kind of come to that realization?
Yeah, I have a good friend, Joel Gandara, who runs a men's group, and a separate men's group, not the one.
Yeah, he'll be.
He and I met in my men's group, and then I ended up joining his.
He'll be a guest on the podcast shortly as well.
Oh yeah, he's awesome. He's a great guy. He's a loving, amazing person. But he runs this thing called the 31 Days to Be a Better Man. So guys, if you sign up for Joel's challenge, if you watch Joel's episode, he'll tell you all about it. But when you do it, make sure to tell Joel that I sent you, and use my coupon code. I have a coupon code for Joel's challenge, and it's 50% extra push-ups for free. You get 50% more push-ups for free. And that's, the coupon code is AB push-ups. So just tell him that. No, so Joel, I've done Joel's challenge like 4 or 5 times. And it's an absolute game changer. I hopefully it's not a spoiler, because the rule is it's 31 different challenges over 31 days, but they should be, you want them to be a surprise. You're going to work them as a cohort, have them and be surprised by them if you've done it before. But the first challenge is about purpose. Like, what's your purpose in life? And, it took me working through that 5 different times to finally arrive at a crystal clear purpose. And the purpose is to learn and to teach. So that's how I found it, was going through his challenge, yet again.
It's hard to distinguish your purpose. I mean, it's one of those overwhelming questions where you get why people say, like, why are you here? And it is overwhelming to answer. Sometimes you just know, and there's different levels to that question. Like, at the end of the day, we're here for different reasons and there's different levels of granularity, but it's really an overwhelming question. So I'm not surprised that it took 5 times.
Yeah. Yeah. It was overwhelming every time, because you have a day to do this challenge. It was like, I got to the end of it. I was like, I think this is right. But it just, I would arrive at something that I would try to make a purpose or try it on for size. And it was like, I was always afraid that I didn't have it right, that it was somehow off. Right. But the thing is, when I finally found it, it was obvious. It clicked. It was like, nope, no questions asked. This is it. So a lot of soul searching and discovery. And it's not like I just spent 5 different days of, 5 different instances thinking about this. This was like a long journey of like introspection and discovery to ultimately land here. But I would say, once you find it, you got it right. Like Simon Sinek style. Once you find your purpose, like you just know it, and it's an inviolable truth.
That's what I was going to say, that a lot of questions like that, when you finally land on the answer, you're like, oh, isn't that so obvious? Like I kind of knew it all along, but I just couldn't articulate it. I couldn't kind of put words to it. And then you put words to it and you're like, oh, this makes perfect sense. And I think sometimes it's more a process of stripping stuff away than it is finding stuff, right? Like you have all of these assumptions about yourself, or I have all of these assumptions about myself, and these roles and these responsibilities and all. And you kind of have to strip all of that away and be like, what do I just enjoy at its kind of core essence? What is it that brings me meaning in life? That I feel like my life matters when I do it and that I enjoy it. So one of the questions I ask folks for each of these episodes is, what is a core truth that you believe that a lot of other people would disagree with you about? Or phrase the question the other way, what is a lie that you think a lot of people believe that's actually getting in their way and holding them back? And when I asked you this question, we came up with 2. So one was that the truth is subjective, and the other was that people believe that more is always better. So what are your thoughts? Which one do you want to tackle first?
Hey, we could bounce back and forth, man. I guess the one that's maybe kind of a top of mind right now is that more is always better, right? There's this, enough is like this elusive thing. And it's one of the hardest things to do is to figure out like what's enough. Where do you stop? Where do you, stop chasing, stop growing? So as a business owner, as I talk to other business owners, everyone always has their mindset is growth oriented. Like if you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not growing, you're dying. You got to grow. And then in my life, I like to sometimes just take a concept, multiply it by -1 and see what the opposite feels like, just to kind of help me like understand like the trade space a little bit.
Can you give us an example? What's an example of that?
Well, in this case, I was like, what would happen if I just, what would happen if this was wrong? What if it's not true that if you're not growing, you're dying? What if it's not true that you should always be growth minded? Like, what if it's perfectly okay to have a business that's just like profitable and stable and gives you what you need, gives you what you want out of it. And they're like, that would be enough. And I was like, what would that look like? Just started like thinking about that stuff. And then you start to like allow certain ideas to come in, like the Oracle of Omaha, right? Warren Buffett. What does he do? He buys businesses that cash flow and holds on to them. And these generate cash, right? And he reinvests the profits. He's got his own, he's got his own style. But at the end of the day, it's a good, healthy business. It doesn't have to be constantly growing, but you want it to be exothermic, right? You want it to be profitable, value, and producing profit, so that it's self-sustaining and then delivers value into the ownership. It doesn't have to be growing. So what's enough, right? And in my life, so when I was 37 years old in 2017, just taking my age, I retired from my business. I ended up taking 5 years off. I took it back over in like mid 22, but I was able to retire for 5 years because I decided like what's enough, right? I sat down. I was like, okay, I need this much money a year. I can live on less than that. And I would constantly like ask for less than what I need, or just want less than what I know. And I would always give myself room for like failure or contraction. And by arranging all that stuff, I realized I had enough. Like it was good enough. And so I could just walk away, and I did. And 2 years later, I ended up joining EO. Would proceed to be an EO member for like 6 years. I'm no longer in EO. But when I was there, I met a lot of people that are like, "Hey, what are you doing to grow your business? What are you doing to grow your business?" I'm like, "I'm not growing my business. it's enough. It's good enough. And it's hard. It's hard to let go of that drive to continue to grow, to continue to do more, continue to be more, to have more, to get more. And I'm not even talking about from a materialistic standpoint. It's more of just like this innate human drive, especially as men, to just get out there and grow and provide and like do more. So I think it's a bigger challenge to like struggle with understanding like where's the boundary? Where do I stop?
Yeah.
Right. And then to recognize it when you get there and not chase the next thing.
Sharing a little bit about my journey. There was a point where my business was good enough that I really didn't need to be there for a lot of hours, and it was producing. And I kind of was like, okay, this is enough. And we can get into why people don't feel that in a second, but I did feel that. And so then I turned my attention to my health. I turned my attention to my family time. I turned my attention to those things. And I found that I was doing the same thing in the beginning. I was like, I got to get more family time. I got to get more healthy. I got to get so that sickness, if you want to call it that, or whatever it is, of like always pursuing better didn't resolve for me. It just changed focus. And finally, my big learning was that I was coming from a place of lacking rather than a place of love. And instead of feeling like, oh, I actually love myself and my circumstances right now. And yeah, I can work to change them, but I'm not working to change them because there's something wrong with me. I'm not broken. I'm working to change these things because I just kind of want to experience life differently. I want to, add something. It allowed me to slow down and not be in a rush. And it was the pacing that was important more than the more or the less. I still struggle to grow. Struggle is the wrong word. I still aspire to grow, but it's no longer a struggle. It is now like a slow process that unfolds and that I kind of feel every moment of it. So that was my experience of kind of putting that same energy elsewhere and then realizing I was making the same mistake.
Well, that's fascinating. You were able to stop, but then you woke up and realized, oh, I'm just doing it a different way.
Isn't that stupid?
Yeah, but then you recognized it again. It sounds like you achieved mastery in the end.
I think that's the story of life, right? Is that we make the same mistakes almost over and over again, but we catch them earlier and earlier and we correct, right? And so I don't think any one of us is immune to making the same mistake twice. I think we make them more than once. It's just how good can we get at catching them? Journaling has helped me a lot with that. Journaling has helped me a lot with catching my patterns and my I don't know. I call it talking to myself. Sometimes I'm journaling, sometimes I'm doing it while I walk, but just paying attention to my patterns. And what happened in the beginning, it would take me months to realize. In the beginning, it would take me years. I used to have a no a-hole rule, which is if I haven't realized that I've been an a-hole in the last 12 months, it means that I've been an a-hole. You know what I mean? So I was like, that was one way for me to know I wasn't growing. So I was like, okay, in what way have I not been doing justice to the people?
What do you mean? You're saying, if I don't notice that I've been an a-hole, it means I'm oblivious to the fact that I'm an a-hole. But if you're able to pinpoint it every now and then, correct yourself and grow from it and have that awareness, then now you're paying enough attention and able to be a good human.
You articulated that perfectly. Yes.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's an amazing concept. It's like, I want to see and raise you one. It's any fault or failure or thing that you want to improve. Its absence should scream alarm bells at you, right? Like if there's something about me that I want to change and I'm not noticing it anywhere, I'm oblivious to it.
What's an example? Illustrate it for me.
No, I'm kind of going in the abstract, just like thinking about what you're saying. I could, if you give me a second, I'd probably try to come up with some damaging examples from my own life. There's probably a ton of them, but it also brought to mind there's a saying in poker, right? If you're at the table and you don't know who the mark is, you're the mark. But this idea that like, if you're oblivious to this circumstance, it probably means that you're in the middle of it. It's just a really keen insight that you had. And then I'm kind of just appreciating hearing it from you and learning about it.
Thank you. I want to dig into your multiply by -1, because that is like, I feel like in life, when we take concepts from one school of thought and apply them elsewhere, there's so much creativity, there's so much insight to be had. So if we take, for example, how we think about finance and bring that to how we deal with raising kids in terms of expected outcomes and things like that, there's these parallels that get drawn that help you. So mathematics is a great one, because in mathematics, you have these truths, you have these laws, theorems. I mean, there's like multiplying something by -1 is a thing. You know what I mean? And so I'm fascinated by the idea of saying, let me take something in my life and let me multiply it by -1 and see what happens. Do you do that often? What's the trigger usually that makes you pull that strategy out?
It's how I operate. So I use the metaphor multiply by -1 just because one, it's kind of cute, it's kind of mathematical, but it also gets the point across. It's also sort of nonlinear or like out of the ordinary enough that when someone hears it, it kind of stops them and forces them to think about like, what the f- does he mean? Sorry, the hell does that guy mean? Multiply by -1. So one, I use that phrase because it'll arrest the person and make them like actually think about it cognitively. But what I'm really doing is just sort of like, you could say I'm inverting something or I'm just looking at the opposite side of the boundary. So I do it, but continually and ruthlessly. And I've done it as long as I can remember. I can't remember not doing it. I don't have a memory of being a person, even a child, and not doing it. But the operation goes like this. If I'm thinking about a thing, I'm considering it. I just, there comes a time when I'm deep in thought, considering, some pathway, some eventuality, some concept, and I will stop and I will consider the opposite as far away from what I'm considering, because it's the fastest way for me to look at the entire picture and get a comprehensive understanding is to take the opposite point of view. Now, and I may do that even when the opposite point of view is like heinous or awful. It's like, it's antithetical to like my person and who I am, but I'll look at it just to see like, am I missing something? Is there something in the middle that I didn't consider? Because I could stop and say, well, let me take about 15% off over there, Squirrely Dan, and then another 10%, or 10%, whatever. That's a letter key reference. But anyway, I could go all the way back down. I could slowly traverse this like idea space, right? Or, I could just look at the complete opposite, look at 2 data points and get a quick assessment as opposed to spending a long time thinking through all these range of possibilities. So that's why I do it. I just look at the opposite. It helps me kind of like, it's just like a quick perspective shift. And I boxed for like a hot minute in college. Like I think like one summer I joined a boxing gym, learned how to box poorly, right? But my boxing coach told me, he said, when you're fighting a southpaw, right, a lefty, right? So normally, you lead with your dominant hand is back. You lead with your non-dominant hand, but a southpaw lefty is going to lead with their right hand, right? So if you're squared off against them, the way that you want to circle and kind of get at the other guys is disconcerting, because as a righty, you're not used to facing off against a lefty, right? I guess the same thing's true in baseball, right? And vice versa. But the lefty is used to the righties, right? So he called it the 2-second southpaw. The 2-second southpaw, right? So the 2-second southpaw goes like this. He's like, you just swap and you come back. So the idea that when you're in an unknown situation, right, that you just switch quick and then come right back, it'll give you just a second to like live in that other position and maybe give you an opening that the other, whatever this thing that you're up against didn't expect. So I've always done this like multiply by -1 thing. And then to the mathematicians in the audience, one of the most fundamental parts of abstract math is called group theory. It's one of the most basic constructs that you can have. It's this really elegant, beautiful thing. There are only 3 rules. You have an identity element. It's closed under an operation, and that operation is invertible. Every element has an inverse, right? So this idea of invertibility, of taking an inverse, ends up being like one of the most like fundamental things in abstract math, because it's one of the 3 axioms of group.
I think we spend so much of our lives looking at the world through our own eyes that we don't know what we're blind to. And what you're describing is a way to basically see the other side. Because I always say, if somebody comes to me and they disagree with me completely, I have to trust that as a human being, they see something of value in what they're saying. So for me to just deny them wholeheartedly would be inauthentic. I'd have to kind of explore it from their perspective in order to say, okay, what is the value that they see? There's actually something in there of value. And it's beneficial to me to go see the world from their perspective and try to get it. As you know, for many years, I did brainstorming events for scientists. And before that, we did corporate training. And there is a creativity tool called assumption reversal. Mm-hmm. And so you take something like a restaurant and you go, what are all the things you assume about a restaurant? Mm-hmm. Well, I assume there's going to be a menu. I assume there's going to be a waiter. I assume I'm going to be sitting down. I assume, right? And you go, great. Now let's reverse one or more of those and then design a business around it. Design like, what would that restaurant look like if there were no waiters, which the world kind of came to see during the lockdowns, right? We actually changed how we order. What would it look like if there was no menu? What would it look like if there were no tables, right? And you can imagine these realities that don't exist But if you let yourself embody them, you find some pretty cool ideas in those assumption reversals. Some of the biggest breakthroughs we had at workshops were exactly that, where somebody would say, okay, I'm assuming this, and then they'd reverse it, and you would watch their eyes, and they'd be like, oh, that's not true. Why have I been believing that this whole time?
Yeah, I love that, dude. That's amazing. It's super cool. And now, by the way, I eat standing up like almost all the time, so it makes me want to go open a stand-up restaurant. The assumption reversal is brilliant. That's a super cool tool because, sometimes it just takes that nudge and you shift out and you now like see so much more. I'm sure you know this as someone who leads brainstormers, right, for technical people. Sometimes the more you constrain someone, the more creative they become. Like if you give them a blank canvas and a giant universe, they can get analysis paralysis and it's hard to be creative. Whereas if you put an invisible box around them with sides that are really close, they find infinitely more infinities like inside of that little box than they would if you didn't constrain them.
All right, I'm going to geek out with you for a second. I don't know that there's a single listener who's going to care about this, but let's try it. I read recently that it is very possible that the entire known universe that we know is actually inside a black hole. Have you come across this theory?
No, I haven't, but it wouldn't surprise me. So what's interesting is you can kind of get loosey-goosey with definitions, and it's really easy to make certain statements true. But
right. Yeah. The point they were making is something about the mass and the size of the universe, and that we have theories from relativity. We have formulas from relativity that would imply that because of the mass and size of our universe, the only logical explanation would be if we're inside a black hole, which had me wondering if we're inside one, but then we have black holes inside of our own universe. Mm-hmm. Is it like an ever repeating pattern, like a fractal, or is it more of an Ouroboros? Is that the name of the snake that's eating its own tail?
Interesting.
Right? Where like that black hole is now sucking in all the matter and like kind of recycling it back. And like, is it more of a loop than an infinitely bidirectional situation?
Well, I just have to give you credit. You have officially nerd sniped me, and I would be thinking about this for the rest of the day. So those are two fascinating concepts. One of them I can comment on, the other one I can't. So a black hole, there's a handful of different definitions of them, but a really simple way to say it is if you have a collection of mass that's concentrated, you have a mass that's concentrated for any mass. I mean, like ye old coffee cup full of coffee, it's a mass, right? There's a distance away from this thing. If you go radially, when I say radially, I mean, if I go this way, this way, this way, this way, I just go radially outward from this thing. There's something called the Schwarzschild radius, which is the definition of an event horizon, at the boundary of this thing. Every mass has a Schwarzschild radius, right? Every mass, it's just for things that are small or not really for things that are not very dense, it's infinitely far away. Not infinite. I mean, it's ridiculously far away. So it's not inconceivable to say you take all the mass in the universe, it's going to have a Schwarzschild radius, and almost by definition, that radius is going to be beyond us. So we would therefore be like in a black hole. If you define it that way, there are other definitions, of course, like just something they call it a singularity, which is where this thing called the metric becomes non-invertible. But that's a much more nerdier technical thing. On the snake, the Ouroboros, that's a really fascinating idea. It's a really interesting, fascinating idea. I've never stopped to think that, of course, if you consider the whole universe, if it's in a black hole, then there's black holes inside of black holes. Then it makes you wonder, are there black holes inside of black holes, inside of black holes, inside of black holes? And I don't see why wouldn't there be? There's no reason not to be. It's almost like a statement on, things are not uniform. Like if you look out across the universe, one of the things that's fascinating about it is not uniform, right? It's not isotropic. It's not isotropically distributed. It's clumpy. There are clumps of things in the universe. There are clumps of galaxies. And within the galaxies, there are clumps of superclusters. Within the superclusters, there's clumps of galaxies. Within the galaxies, there's like stars and solar systems. And at every level, things are clumpy and they're not uniformly spread out, right? And you see it all over nature, everywhere. So why would the inside of a black hole not be somewhat
So
by deduction, not by deduction, by induction, which is by looking at the next thing, it's most likely for that to be the case as opposed to it being uniformly distributed.
I'm going to apologize to the listener and I'm going to go deeper. Yeah. So you said the word event horizon, which makes me think about information, right? Because the event horizon is the point at which information can't go back the other way. It's like for the plumbers out there, it's like a check valve, right? For information, right? The information can only go. And that's the part that makes this really interesting, because if we think about the universe as information, forget about the fact that there's matter and energy or whatever. If we boil it down to it's all information, then a black hole is a place where the information goes inside and doesn't come back out. So if we think about our universe as the information of our universe, you have this black hole inside of black hole inside of black hole. But what we're really talking about is he can send information that way, but they can't send information this way.
Yeah.
And, and if we're inside a universe, we can't send any information out, but information from outside can come into our universe. So I think some really interesting parallels there when you turn it into information about human beings and how we process and how we, you know what I mean? And
you're actually chasing something that's like a vibrant area of study. It's they call it information theory, but if you this idea of quantifying information and understanding in the context of black holes is something that physics PhDs spend careers on. So this is a vibrant area of study, is looking at this stuff like as information comes in and thinking about it from an information theoretic standpoint. So your insight's right on.
One of the things that I would get a question out, so we facilitate, so the company still exists. It's called No Innovation, and they do they do brainstorming events for scientists, roughly speaking, all kinds of workshops, but that's a good umbrella way to describe it. And do workshops in space, do workshops in medicine, do workshops across the field. And people would say, how do you work in all these different places? Like, don't you have to be a content expert yourself? And the truth is no. The truth is that as creativity facilitators, we're process experts, not content experts. So what content people bring to the table is really okay. It doesn't matter. I've actually facilitated workshops in languages that I don't understand, simply by having a translator help me answer a few key questions that help me make design decisions without understanding the full context of what was going on. But I asked that because I know your business is the same way. I know you guys work across lots of different industries solving problems, right? So do you have a process? Do you have a secret sauce? Like how do you go about finding the right problems to work on and then helping people solve them?
Thank you for the question. One answer, I have an abysmal answer. The other one's pretty solid. So
okay.
How do I find things? I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good at like the finding and the top of funnel marketing activities. That's the next frontier for my partner and I to go explore and solve. The finding. If any of the listeners have great ideas for how to find business, I'm all ears. I want to learn. Not great at that.
You can find Ab at abdeweese.com.
Yeah. But I use the vanilla ice method. What is it? If you got a problem, I'll solve it. But the thing is, like, I got to walk up to you and be like, hey, you got a problem? It's not a very effective way to sell. But every time I am lucky enough for someone to trust me enough to tell me like what's not working or what they want to be better, or not even that, just to give me the opportunity to just devour and consume the what is of their business, of their livelihood, of how they make money, when I have that opportunity, I'm like a man on fire. Okay. I love making money. Absolutely love it. The lack of money is the root of all evil, not the love of money. I love making money. And I love it. Right. And by the way, I also like love, just like I got enough. Right. This is weird juxtaposition, but I love it. And it's almost like money is like the uniform denomination of reward, right? If in almost any setting, right? If you deliver something of value to someone else, it's easily denominated, in money, right? So I love to help. I love helping people. Love helping people. So sounds like a platitude, right? But I love helping people make money. I love it. I love making businesses more profitable. I love helping my customers get wins. I love solving their problems. I love removing pain. I love it. I love to automate things. I like to make them more efficient. I like to help people. I like to train people. I like to skill them up. I like to, what's the right word here? I like to displace, labor and people that are comfortable. That does not mean get people fired or make them irrelevant. What it means is displace them, right? If I go in and I automate something, congratulations, you got a team of 5 who can now go do something else in the same factory, right? They can go and build and make this thing more profitable. They can work less. They can work less overtime. They can be happier. They can stop and they can afford to like ponder and think and be creative as opposed to being like monkey at a button. Like that's an idea of like displacing labor. I love helping my customers make money. And so how do I win? Like what's my secret sauce? That's my secret. My secret is I literally genuinely love to help customers win, make their businesses more successful. And then it's just as simple of like yielding to that drive, that creativity, that like desire to help. And then I take that innate desire to help. I take just this love to learn. My purpose is to learn. So I'm going to learn about your business, right? That curiosity, I get to bring it all in and understand what's going on. And then if I'm lucky, I pull it all in. I'm like, oh, dude, we could do this or we could do this. Mm-hmm. And then, more often than not, some of those make sense and the juice is worth the squeeze, right? And that's how we close deals and bring customers in the door. But in terms of like, how do we find the customers? I'm absolutely clueless about that. So I have no idea.
So a couple of things that came up for me there. One, so Routine Rebel is a culture first organization. Like when I set out to do this, I had 2 non-negotiables. One, my primary motive could not be money. My primary motive had to be doing this thing and protecting my passion and adding value. And 2, it had to be culture first. Like it's not about KPIs. It's about kind of living and behaving in a way. And one of our strategies, we have 3 core values and 12 strategies and one of the strategies is work your way out of a job. Yeah. And my promise is that if you are the type of person who can work your way out of your job, I promise you there will be another job waiting for you. You know what I mean? Because to your element about displacement, it's proactive displacement. It's also more rewarding. I don't want anybody doing the same thing day in, day out, being bored, not liking what they do. I want them excited. I want them solving meaningful problems, things that matter to them. The way to do that is to say, what do I do? How do I make it easier? How do I make it more scalable? How do I hand it off to somebody else? How do I package it? Those are the right questions to.
That's the secret. So few people get it. So dear listener, Mr. and Mrs. If you take one thing away, like it doesn't matter what walk of life you're in, what your job is, your career, how much power, seniority you have. If you take the attitude of working your way out of a job, which seems counterintuitive. Like Stavros said, the magic happens. That attitude cannot be taught, you just have to have it. It has to like spring forth from inside of you. And that is the most valuable thing you could possibly find in a vendor and an employee and a leader and anything. Somebody with that attitude will be forever employable and their wages will increase, their value will increase. But it's this idea that you're going to embrace this notion that you're constantly seeking to make yourself irrelevant for the benefit of everyone else, right? Yeah. I want to make myself irrelevant for the benefit of everyone else so that they don't depend on me, so that I can leave lasting good, right? Like it's that attitude that I think embodies this idea of like working your way out of a job.
I think that message goes to everybody. And I think if we are speaking directly to entrepreneurs, so many entrepreneurs have trouble not being the central cog in their organization. And there's lots of things that get in the way there. I would say mindset is probably the biggest, just kind of learning to trust, learning to train, learning to systematize. But working your way out of a job as an entrepreneur, it's not enough to be like, oh yeah, I'll hire somebody and hand them the keys and they can go. You actually have to develop the skill of how to work your way out of a job. And I've seen so many entrepreneurs build their company so fast without figuring out how to remove themselves every step of the way. And they end up being a bottleneck. And then they're overwhelmed. Then they've got too much going on. And then if they stop doing anything, it breaks because they didn't build. So they develop this debt, right? So your company's growing, but you're building this debt in the background, which is, I don't know what kind of debt to call it, but you're building this debt where you can't remove yourself from it. And then you got to keep paying it with interest. You not being able to walk away from your business is the interest on that debt you took for not learning how to make yourself irrelevant from the beginning.
100%. So if you'll permit me, I would like to name the debt.
Please.
It's hamster wheel debt. Like the faster you run, the faster that wheel goes and the harder it is to get off of it.
I love it. That's a great name. I want to dive into your backstory, but I want to share something that we learned at No Innovation that might be useful to you in your business. So what we learned was that we could find business by identifying where in the customer's life cycle they experienced problems. And we found 3 or 4 of them that were reliably there for all of our customers. And then that's what led to the gateway. So for our customers, there's a point where they are not getting interesting proposals from their communities. And that is either happening because the communities are too young, and so there hasn't been enough formed, or because the communities are too old and stodgy. Right in the middle there's a healthy period where they don't need anybody to come in. Everything's working great. But at the very early stages and then at the tail stages before that S-curve takes off again, there's these lulls. And the way they experience that is our proposals coming in don't look good. And that was true across the sciences, across the science funders. Another one was we don't have consensus within our community. And so people think different things in a way that's actually disruptive to progress, right? So not because a certain amount of dynamism works, but when it's the wrong kind of dynamism and you need consensus, that's how you can come together, focus resources, and take off for the next time. And we were able to identify 4 or 5 of these. And then we were able to articulate those problems to our customers and say, are you experiencing a lack of ideas, a lack of good proposals? No. Are you experiencing a lack of consensus? No. Are you experiencing? We would go through these 4 or 5 until we found the one they're like, yes, that's exactly what I'm experiencing. And then we built our interventions around that. So it might be interesting to I don't know, try to find if there's any common experiences across these industries that you service in their own life cycles. Are you working primarily with the R&D departments, or who is it that you're usually working with?
So I wasn't expected. I appreciate the question. It almost feels very selfish and self-serving to answer. I'm like getting free poking in the air. We work with a variety. Like we do a lot of work with manufacturing departments, a lot of work with R&D departments, and then on the AI. So we also have like an AI management consulting line of business that we do. And for that, it's more working with business owners and senior leaders. And so that is, the ADDer in me and the learner in me who likes to lean into the future is way more excited about that part of the business, just because I get a dopamine hit every time I get to sit in a room with somebody and help them take this newfangled disrupting technology that's as big of a deal as electricity was when it was invented. And how do we just rethink your business processes in tiny, subtle ways that really move the needle? That's so exciting. So for those, it's going to be, senior executives and board level responsibility at lower middle market businesses. On the engineering side, it tends to be engineer, senior, very, very senior level individual contributor engineers. Think the engineer that's got like a 30-year career that maybe doesn't have any direct reports, but their job is to go out and solve really, really big problems. And they're looking for vendors that they can rely on. And they're wise enough, because they've been around long enough, that the last thing they look at is the rate or the cost, because they know that you want somebody who, it's not their first rodeo. They know what they're doing. They know how to solve the problem. And they want a vendor that comes in and speaks with the intelligent, knows how to do mission critical, safety critical things. So finding those individual contributors who have been entrusted with responsibility. So this individual contributor might report to a manager, who reports to a director, but this person is so senior, this engineer is constantly consulted by the director and the VP, even though they don't report directly up. It's like a person with that level of responsibility, right? That's who we best engage with, because those guys have been around the block. They're a little long in the tooth, and we can just start to communicate. We'll have what my partner Rishi and I call a high bandwidth conversation, right? Meaning just with a few sentences, we can get across a ton of meaning back and forth, as opposed to stopping to really explain and build up concepts. So that's the persona. That's the ideal persona. And because that person is typically, given the marching order, go find me, go out, go look in the marketplace, find a collection of vendors, and help us find the right person. And so they're really doing a lot of the sorting and deciding, and then if we get their support and buy-in, then we tend to win those deals. And those tend to also turn into the most productive, pleasant, mutually appreciative relationships. And these individual contributors, they might live in R&D, they might live in manufacturing, they might live in accounting, right? They might live in whatever functional role they have. They've got some business problem that needs a technical solution. Sometimes it's a little easier to name, like they need a piece of automated test and measurement equipment for a manufacturing line, or it's a little more amorphous, right? So that's I guess that's from a persona standpoint. And then what's the problem? Again, I'm kind of a victim of my own. We're generalists, right? So the vanilla ice method, right? You got a problem, you all solve it. But I don't know, man. Let me throw one more challenge that I've got that I don't really understand. And anybody listening that's got ideas, I'd love to hear you guys. If you're a business owner and a dad, you want to join my dad's group, like hit up Stavros, hit up me, come join us. Big, vibrant group of 700 men on WhatsApp. So one of the things we struggle with, and Rishi and I we're constantly beating our heads against this wall. We are generalists and we're agnostic to the problem in the industry. We just bring the smartest people in the room and solve things with like software, artificial intelligence, electronics, signal processing, RF. Like we just bring these solution sets, right? And this know-how. But when people ask us what we do, we're like, well, we can do anything. Like, no, you can't do it. Yeah, we can solve we solve problems. What we do. We can't do everything all at once, but we can approach and solve any problem. And if we can't, to find the right people. I mean, one of my employees blew up pressure vessels full of rocket fuel in the desert for the government and took high-speed video of them to analyze how the explosion propagates. We put AI in satellite. We do AI in space. We've been language models on FPGAs that fly in communication satellites. But they say, what do you do? We're like, we can do anything. Like, no, you can't. You need to tell us what your capabilities are, and then we'll compare that against our needs. Right. So getting people to open up with their needs has been I don't know how to do that. But when they open up, then it becomes very easy to harness the desire to help, the willingness to learn and understand and put myself in the customer's shoes. And then, all the dominoes just fall easily from there. But, finding the people who have an immediate need or some sort of pain point and the budget to back it up, and then to get them to just talk about what their challenges are, that's the real problem. So I don't know if, what are your insights? Like, how would you approach this?
So when there's a part of my career where I did corporate training, very large companies, Fortune 500 kind of companies. And in each one, the exact title of the person you're saying was different. Mm-hmm. In a lot of organizations, it was something called a technical director, which was somebody who had reached kind of director level, but didn't have any direct reports. Like they weren't running a team. They weren't a product manager or anything like that, but they owned a specific problem at the organization, and they would choose. They were like the smartest of the smartest, and they would just be pointed at like whatever problem the company.
Yeah, 100%.
At some companies, that was called technical director. At some companies, it didn't have a specific title. At some companies, it was called something else. But every company had these people when we're talking about Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. I don't know if moving up market might actually make it easier for it, because I don't know that middle market very well. And if that role is as defined in those middle market companies, or if that role in those middle market companies is more muddled, where that's part of their job, but they're also doing X, Y, or Z or something.
Yeah, let's talk through this for a second. It's kind of fun. By the way, it's kind of fun to do this like in plain sight, right? So I kind of divide the market into three buckets, right? There's like the small business. I call it the EO bucket, EO or the EO business. Somebody's doing like $1 million in sales, 1 to 20 million a year, maybe 1 to 50 million a year. Those are small businesses. And those guys, it is very, very, very difficult for them to break out enough budget to justify bringing us in, right? Like we're not cheap, and we don't want to be, right? So in the big market, with the big boys, the Fortune 500s. In my engineering company, we've done business with all these big guys: Lockheed Martin, Bell Helicopter, Medtronic, Abbott, Halliburton. Let's see, Abiomed, a bunch of 3-letter agencies, the intelligence communities, Intel, Qualcomm, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Bank of New York Mellon. Right? We just rattle off General Electric. We can rattle off all these massive companies that we do work with. So the downside there is these guys are huge. Right? The sales cycle is 9 to 18 months, really, really, really long sales cycle. But they tend to have these personas, these really senior level individual contributors. But it's just, it can be difficult. You don't get to make as much impact. You get to deliver something that moves the needle for the business, but it's not. One of my friends was telling me how he delivered a sales plan to a very, very, very large communications company. And he's like, it's just not as meaningful to do X for them. If I would rather do X divided by 100 for somebody smaller, because it just means so much more to them. Okay. But so in the middle, this sweet spot in the middle, I have this naive hope that in the middle market, right, in the lower middle market or in the middle market, that the management team, the layers of management, the stratification, and how many layers of management they have versus how far away is the decision making from the front ranks, and also but their P&L is large enough that it makes sense to place some of these bets, and that's, I guess that's why I think those are things. I put a ton of effort, I poured my soul into helping a bunch of EO-sized business owners learn about AI in the early days. Like when ChatGPT first dropped, I had something called Ab's office hours, and I would do, Ab's AI office hours. And I would do like 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. So we had time for the Europeans, a time for the Asians, and of course, Americans in the middle. And people would just come in and we talk about AI, and I'd always want to help. And we ended up getting, so through that, and then just pouring my heart into a couple of 1,000-person AI focused WhatsApp channels, just constantly contributing and giving and helping and answering. Rishi and I had a lot of at bats, a lot of sales opportunities. What we found, we were a little slow to learn. What we found is they all had these problems where they didn't have any money. The ER's account, they were like, we would give them a proposal and they would say, oh, we were thinking like $500. Like,
right,
oh,
right.
Well, yeah, that's going to get you like a couple hours. Like you're not. Oh, and then we learned to be better at qualifying. And once we started qualifying this, what's your budget? Well, then we would throw a big number out, and then those meetings stopped happening. So I don't know, man. So it's like, I feel like somewhere in the middle market and figuring out how to find and help, just like we found and helped an audience of EOers, I would love to find and help an audience of, mid-market executives that are running. You take an EO P&L and add 3 zeros to it, to be able to just give and give and give and give and give and help and help and help and help and help. We're going to get at bats. That's the way that I work, but I don't know how to find that audience. I know how to be relevant and be helpful, but I don't know how to find the audience. Maybe they're all listening to the show.
Are you familiar with the company Ideal?
Yeah, I am. Right. I know of them. I heard about them like 20 years ago, or I think it was 20 years
ago. Yeah, they've been around. They're effectively a product development company, right?
Yeah.
And so you can make the same case that they can do everything for anybody. So I think at the end of the day, and I understand my answer here is going to be terribly concise, right? And we can dive into this a different time. I think this goes down to avatar definition and awareness building. Whether that awareness building is through advertisements or whether that awareness building is through relationships, I think you have to pick an avatar or define one. To do a little bit of experience share, we figured out that our best avatar was somebody called a program officer at a government funding agency. And so we knew that they were the ones who had the budget. We knew that they were the ones who had the problem. We knew that they were the ones who were going to benefit the most from solving the problem. We knew, we knew about them. It took years to figure out who our avatar was, right? We tried a lot of different things. And then, like you're saying, qualification. Like I just started becoming really transparent about what we price. Like, a lot of people don't like to put that on their website. I was like, no, like, here's everything you want to know about us so that you can make your decision,
right. People self-select, right? The ones who would otherwise waste your time, they get to know in advance and they don't have to waste their time or yours.
Right. And a lot of times, even if somebody couldn't afford us, I would say, well, here's Because like you, I love to just help, right? So I'd be like, look, you can't hire us, but here's what I could do to help you out. Like, let's have a meeting. I'll help you design an agenda. Let's have a meeting. I'll help you think through your problem and articulate it for you so that you can make it actionable or something like that. So there is always the spirit of giving and kind of helping with any community that we serve. To give you better thoughts, I would want to go through like the last 15 years of your customers and kind of like look at avatar by avatar and go through an exercise that says like, okay, where can we narrow it down and focus? And I mean, this is a different truth lie paradigm, but so many times entrepreneurs are reluctant to pick an avatar because they feel like they're leaving stuff on the table. They're like, no, I want to, but everything in my career has told me that the more I focus, the more opportunity I get, not less. And so by leaving that opportunity off the table and saying, no, these are the opportunities I'm most capable of handling, I can do a better job. And what happens when you do a better job? People say thank you. People spread the word. People give you good reviews. What do those things do? They bring you more opportunities. And then you down select from those, which ones you can do the best job at. That cycle, that flywheel has served me throughout my whole life, and just kind of learning to say no to things so that you can have time left over to say yes to the right things and then do a good job.
That's always brilliant advice.
Can I ask about your backstory? Can you tell us where you grew up? Can you tell us kind of how you came to be, where you are in your life right now? Like, what's the origin story?
Yeah. Thank you for the question. So I'm a redneck from Mississippi. I was born and raised in a small town called Philadelphia, Mississippi. I left when I was 19, went to JUCO, went to junior college for a year. And then I was like, you know what? I think there's a bigger world out there. I bought a one-way ticket to Vail, and I had a place to live and not a job. I just showed up, and I always believed that I've always had this deep belief that things will work out. Right. So it was like, it'll work out. I can figure it out. So I just showed up in Vail and made my way. I was a ski bum for 2 years. I think I got fired from every job I had in the Vail Valley. They had like 5 or 6. So this is a terrible employee, but, the one I had the longest was a bellhop. It was my first sales job. I then went to University of Colorado, studied physics. I met my wife there, and then, I ended up chasing her down to Dallas, marrying her, down in DFW. And I've been here ever since. Started a career, started a family, started a business, and just continued to sink the roots deeper in the community. And, I woke up one day, when my kids are, approaching double digits, and I was like, you know what? We live in a great community. Even though it's not this little bitty hometown that I grew up in, there's this hometown feel. And then I did the unthinkable. I moved during COVID. I moved like a mile or two away. I was like, why would you ever move? Why would you ever sell a house and buy another one and only move 2 miles? Like, why would somebody ever do that? I couldn't fathom it. So you're going to move, you got to move. You could go to New York, right? Or Toronto or something. But we did, and we stayed in the community, and that move, that like 2 mile move, really cemented for me like how awesome it is to be in a place that you can call home with deep roots in the community. So I've been in Dallas area since. And so that's where I'm hailing from today, is a little town called Grapevine, right outside of, in the Dallas Metroplex area.
How did the dad group come to be?
So if you guys know EOS, Entrepreneurs Organization, there's a couple of themes. One of them is it's a gym, not a spa, right? Carry your own bag. These are some of the things. You get out what you put in. And these are so true, right? So I had some buddies that were like, hey, my friend, my rich friend has a house in the mountains, and he's going to let us borrow for a weekend. And this other guy's got his private jet. We're going to fly over there. Do you want to come? I was like, I got a soccer game this weekend that I'm, or hey, we're going to go do this like cool adventure, like in Mexico. You want to come? It's like, we have a school play. Like I can't, my kid's birthday. And what I realized was, I had access to this community with a lot of opportunity, and people that are way wealthier than me, but for just these adventure opportunities, or people who maybe were in their 50s or kids are out of the house would invite me to do things, and I would lament. I was like, oh, I can't do that. I'm in a different life stage. And then I got a little bitter and selfish, and I was like, why doesn't EO have a group for dads and, and like men in my stage of life that have kids in the house and have, and they're a soccer coach in addition to like running a business and, and wanted to find, fellowship and community. It's like, why doesn't that exist? And then I was like, well, because I need to make it. Right. So that's kind of that's the way EO works. If you want it, make it. And so I did. I created a group called EO Dads, created a WhatsApp group with me and 2 other guys. called it EO Dads. And then I spent an hour like telling people about it, like online. And I grew it to 99 men in 24 hours. And then grew it to like the WhatsApp limit and, within a month, and then, which was 256 at the time, then hit the next WhatsApp limit, then grew it to, anyway, ultimately grew it to like 800. And then right before I left EO, I was like, you know what? This is my group. Let me just rename it. I renamed it to Ab's Dad's group, something stupid like that. And then a bunch of people left, I think, because they're like, what the hell is this? So, but anyway, so I'm like 700 men, and I just did it because I built it because I needed it. I poured my heart and soul into it, and I've gotten so much in return. And it's just this super vibrant community of men that, it's like 90% stupid dad jokes and just kind of, pointless laughs. But, every now and then people come in with some really, really deep, almost heart-wrenching problems that they're working with. There's a community of men that like, we help each other out, we share highs and lows. And it's just this really special, amazing place to kind of a place to be vulnerable when you need to and have men that'll help you. And I curate it, to bring in, business owners and or, very, very successful men, because that's who I want to surround myself with.
I've definitely experienced the puns and the dad jokes. I've definitely experienced some of the deeper issues, and also just dads discussing stuff like, hey, how do we kind of help our kids manage social media the right way? How do we help, like, just some kind of topic that's relevant to all of us that, it's not a crisis, but it's something that kind of helps you move the needle in an important way.
There's a lot of recurring themes like that. It's like, how do I deal with social media and my kids? Do I give them a phone? And then at first it's like, no. And then other people will come in and say, well, this generation, this is how they connect and how they socialize. So if you don't give that to your kids, you're actually like, you're kind of cutting them out of, the little social groups that are forming. One of the other themes is like, how do I teach my kids how to manage money? Right? How do you too much, not enough? You give them allowance, not allowance. How do you teach them about saving? How do you teach them about investing? Lots of, just there's a lot of really, really, really cool common themes, and how to help them through those things. Chief among them also is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, used to be known as ADD, and it's just, if I could steal the floor for just a second about this. So I used to think it was a 3-letter acronym, just like to sweep a bunch of symptoms under the rug that had nothing to do with each other. It's like, this is a bunch of BS. It's just a way to prescribe Ritalin and push pills, until I was researching, ADD, because I wanted to learn to be a better dad for one of my kids that I just knew had it. Right. Well, I was 20 minutes into that research and I was like, I'm reading about me. And so I'm 43 years old. I'm 45 now, but at the time I was 43. And it was like the heavens part. And I see for the first time, I was like, oh, well, now that makes sense. And that makes sense. And that makes sense. And that makes sense. And so I'm like a high functioning ADDer, right?
So many entrepreneurs are.
Yeah, dude, I've made really good grades. Like my whole school career, school was always easy for me. I'm a successful business owner. I'm a successful person. So surely I don't have ADD. Right. I can't even try that on for size. Right. This is an example of me failing to try the negative. Right. But when I finally figured it out, like everything starts to fall into place. And yeah, tons of entrepreneurs have ADD. And you know what it is, dude? Like, it's the gift. It's the special gift. It's the secret gift. And for anybody listening, whether you have it or whether you don't know you have it, just, what I found, like I had so many amazing things happen for me when I discovered this. So one, I've lived with obsessive compulsive disorder my entire life. OCD, right? Obsessive compulsive disorder. I had a hunch when I was 17. I wrote a research paper about it when I was 18. I got a formal diagnosis when I was 21 from a psychologist, a lot of therapy working through this thing called OCD. And I thought I knew a lot about it. When I realized I have ADD, one, there's a high comorbidity. Comorbidity means bad things happening at the same time. It's really like a dual diagnosis. There's a high comorbidity between OCD and other anxiety disorders and ADD. So I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I learned I had ADD, and I just made a decision I learned that it's possible. There are high functioning ADDers that are very successful, and their success comes at great expense, at the expense of often overwhelming anxiety and pressure to conform. And I was like, damn, like I resemble that remark. And then I multiplied by -1. I said, you know what? What if I do the opposite? So I have so much constant stress because I want to help, because I'm innately a good person and I want to be a good member of whatever tribe and team that I'm in. If I'm in a meeting and people are taking action items, I would always want to take one because I want to do my share and I want to do more than my share. I want to help, but I would then feel immense pressure to get those things done. And I would never do them because I always go to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And at every next thing I would go to, I would pick up more work. Then I would just proceed to not do it. And I would ultimately just let myself down. I'd let my friends down. So I had the audacity to say, you know what? I don't take action items and I don't do homework. And I felt so selfish doing it and saying it at first, but I had the courage to just let me just do it. Let me multiply by a -1 and try this thing that's unheard of, where I never commit to another action item and I never agree to do homework ever again. Okay. That was one thing that I decided. 2, I said, I don't prepare for meetings and I don't take notes, which somebody hearing this, somebody listening to this, that guy's a jerk. Didn't prepare for meetings. What the audacity? No, when I meet with you, I have been preparing for our meeting for 45 years, right? I've been preparing my entire life for this. And, so I don't prepare for meetings, because what I found is that if I just could show up and be my authentic self, that's how I deliver. Right. And that's the ADD superpower. So when I stopped preparing for meetings, stopped taking action items, and stopped doing homework, the stress went away. 6 months later, I was kind of curious, where did my OCD go? Where did my OCD go? Oh, well, it's not here anymore. I wonder why. And then my analytical brain was like, oh, because OCD is an anxiety disorder. OCD is an anxiety disorder. And I don't feel anywhere near the anxiety that I used to feel, because I renegotiated my relationship with the world, where I don't take action items, I don't prepare for meetings. And so these things were causing me immense anxiety, and that went away. The OCD went away, and I became more productive. I became more engaged. I could take more meetings. I could help more people. And I learned the discipline of not committing to do the things that I was never going to do anyway. And I got better at delegating them and not picking them up. And then I would just continue to double down. I turned off all my notifications on my phone. My phone only makes a sound when someone in my favorites calls me. If you text me, or if my wife texts me, anybody texts me, it doesn't ding, it doesn't buzz. And it doesn't ding, it doesn't buzz for emails. Unknown callers are silenced. I turned off my voicemail. You cannot leave me a voicemail. It doesn't even, so my phone doesn't bother me. If I look at it, it bothers me. If I look at it, I get distracted, but I shave it off. Then I took another step. I haven't checked email in a year and a half. It's how can you live in this world and not check email? I don't know. I just decided not to do it. I was like, what's the worst that could happen? I could lose a few customers. I could lose a few opportunities. I could lose, but what would I get back? I would get back untold freedom that I was shackled to that inbox. And I just took the key, turned the key, took off the cuff, and I'm no longer shackled to that inbox. Right. And, funny thing, the important things still make their way to me. Right. I still find the stuff that matters. Right. It's not ostrich head in the sand, but the freedom that comes with it is immense. I'm not Jamie Dimon. I'm not Steve Jobs. Right. I don't have that kind of group around me. I'm not Bezos. But those guys don't check their emails. Right. So why should I? I don't know. It's kind of audacious, but that's where I'm at. Anyway, dude, thank you for listening to that.
So much of that resonates with me. So let me start with just not taking to-do items and feeling like a schmuck for doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So we were talking before about working your way out of a job. And as a founder, part of it is not taking to-do items. That's what it means to as a founder, work your way out of a job. I had, and sometimes still have, shame around that. When I know that there's a to-do item there, I know that, I could say, yeah, I could do it. And really it's better for everybody if I'm not the person to do it, but it doesn't feel that way, right? I feel like I'm not pulling my weight. And anytime I talk to my team about that, they go, no, when you show up for us, you are 100% present. When you show up for us, you're doing X, Y. So what they need from me is not for me to go do that task. What they need from me is to be there for them, to remove obstacles for them, to solve problems, for them when they come across them. And I won't have the bandwidth to do that if I have my own series of to-dos. I remember I used to go through my day and it was just meeting after meeting after meeting, and every meeting would have a to-do. And then we'd get to 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever time the day would end. And I'd have a list of to-dos. And my calendar for tomorrow is all meetings again, right? And so So having to work my way out of that definitely resonates. Kind of thinking about it, the conductor kind of going like this for the orchestra and just kind of going, is that guy really necessary? But like that conductor's necessary. You know what I mean? Like the whole orchestra would be out of what do they call that? The timing would be all off if that person wasn't there. The second part that really resonates with me is the anxiety that comes from just always having a lot, right? Just figuring out how to step back. And I do check email now, but I've gone through seasons where I didn't. And it was definitely liberating. I once went on vacation and I was away for a while. I was away for about a month and a half. And I wrote in my outgoing message, please resend your email in September. This, it was like an auto response. I will not read these when I come back, and it had some stuff like that. And when I came back in September, full inbox, highlighted everything, said archive all. And that was the end of it. You know what I mean? There was probably 3,000 messages in there. And I was just kind of like, it just is what it is. Like you said, if it's really important, it'll come back. You know what I mean? And so I've gone through periods where I've checked. I've gone through periods where I've checked more. I've gone through periods where I've found the right rhythm of checking. My phone also doesn't make noise most of the time. Like it's, I don't have the little red numbers. I don't like to see them. So unless I want to see how many notifications there are in Slack, it won't do that. So much of that resonates. And the only thing I would really add is that's, people shouldn't feel like there's seasons, right? That sometimes you can do this and have it be that way. And sometimes you want to step back into it, but that should be a choice. That should be a choice that you make. Like, I could theoretically delegate the recording of this podcast to somebody in my organization, but I love to do it. I love to talk to people. So I choose to do it. That's something that you could say is a homework item, but it brings me joy to do. So
no, but because you have the discipline to not do homework, you get to play to your highest and best and most enjoyable use, which is doing this. Like this is where you thrive, right? This is what you should be doing. This is as opposed to that other stuff. My friend Scott Novus, when I was telling him about my phone, he said, you have an attention management system. I was like, oh yeah. Yeah. It's a brilliant way to say it, right?
Yeah.
It just pulls me in other directions. As you were talking through like your role, our role as founders and owners or just as leaders, I think one of the critical things that we deliver is just be a cheerleader. Like we have a wellspring of confidence, enthusiasm, positive expectation, positive outlook. It's just natural for us. Like I can't conceive of what it would be like for reality to be a different way. Like reality is like, everything's going to work out. It's going to be fine. It's going to be positive. We're going this way, right? Like you can do it. I can do it. We can do it. Right. Like that level of positivity that just comes so natural to some of us, shame on us if we don't stop to realize that that's not normal. And in some cases, the best gift that we can give others is to share that positivity with them, right? This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, right? So maybe, just maybe your value to the organization isn't doing crap. It's like, it's making people feel good and empowered and excited and just being a damn cheerleader.
I also want to touch on what you said about the dads group and maybe shamelessly plug Routine Rebel a little bit. I think what you said before really resonated with me, which was that you built the group because you needed it, right? You're like, I built the group that I needed. And what we're doing with Routine Rebel is ultimately trying to help every entrepreneur out there redefine what success means and then get out of their own way and kind of create a more fulfilled life. I think what we're doing differently is we're building chapters by identity rather than anything else, right? So we're building chapters for young women who are inside a family business who want to work their way up to leadership. That's an identity. They all share common challenges. They're all going to have a lived experience together. So we're building our chapters that way. We're building a chapter for men entrepreneurs right here in the Tampa Bay area so that there could be some local interactions. And so we might build chapters in the future around couples who run companies, right? So husband-wife team who run a company together. Like that is a unique experience. And so we're going to take that angle as a way to kind of say who we're focusing on. And then for each one of those communities, we'll need one or two leaders, people who want to step in and say so my message out there, if you're somebody who wants to lead one of these things and and wants to kind of help build a community like Ab did with dads, please reach out. We're always looking for the next thought leader to partner with and build these little micro communities. And we're going small on purpose for these communities because I think so many of these organizations are large, and that has its benefit. You get to do your networking, you get to do all of that stuff, but it loses its intimacy. And so we're trying to keep these little chapters tiny for a reason.
Dude, I love that. I just want to highlight a few things. Like you talked earlier about focusing and focusing down, and then unlocking like value and prosperity. This is an example of you doing that, like to great effect. I love how you're talking about these because they are so specific in terms of like lived experience and like life stage and what matters. Like young women in a family business. Like I don't know what it's like to be a woman, but I imagine like you've got to fight to be a kid in a family business and like earn your way and earn your relevance and earn respect is already hard. It's probably even harder as a young lady. Like that's so cool that you put them all in a room together because they have that shared mission as opposed to diluting that across a bunch of people from random walks of life. It's brilliant.
I think there's great entrepreneurial advice there that's general, and I think it's been done, and I think people do it well. So what hasn't been done is this very kind of micro niche focused community building.
I think it's brilliant, dude. I hope to be part of your success. I think
that'd be awesome. Yeah,
I love it. Amazing here. I love it.
All right, I want to ask something because we went on a pilgrimage together.
We did.
And Mickey Singer, I would say that the turning point when I was burnt out and kind of coming around, it was his book, The Surrender Experiment, which was probably the single turning point. And so at some point, I don't remember how did it come to be? At some point in the dad's group, somebody said something and I was like, Mickey Singer, I was like, oh, let's go. And we went and we visited the Temple of the Universe. How did that come to be?
I was like, I need to go meet this man. I want to go meet him and receive his teaching. And so I picked a date and then I posted in the group and said, I'm going to meet Michael Singer. I'm going to make a pilgrimage to Michael Singer. If you want to go, let me know, send me a DM and I'll add you to the group. So I pretty much just flashed up did what I do. I flashed up the bat signal and what I didn't say was who wants to go? Let's find a time.
Right.
I am going at this time to this place, I hope others will come with me. I hope others will join me on this pilgrimage. And they did. It was, and you did too. It was such a fun experience.
Yeah. I read The Surrender Experiment and then The Untethered Soul. And I liked them in that order. I don't know. How did you come across them? What was the first one that you read?
I was under so much stress, like my second or third year in business. I was having panic attacks and I had a very, very good friend who recently went through some tough stuff, like a kind of a metamorphosis of his own. And he said, you got to read this book, The Untethered Soul. It's amazing. So I'm going to send you a copy. So he sends me a copy. I look at it. I read the first chapter. I was like, this feels important. I put it down. And then it took me 10 years to actually pick it back up again and read the damn thing. I knew that I needed it. There was something in part of me that just really knew that this was, of all the things that I needed it. Like I've got like a wall of business books, right? And self-help books and like I'm a big reader and book junkie. But when I took Joel's class, Joel's 31-day challenge, I told you guys about, one of the things you do is read a book. You commit to read a book. Well, every time I did it, I committed to read 31, I committed to read Untethered Soul and I would get a third of the way through and get another third of the way through. And I'm ashamed to say, I think I've got like a page or two left. I do that actually not read the book. And then read the Surrender Experiment. Everybody talks about the Surrender Experiment. There's a guy in the dad's group that embraced it and actually lived. He said, I just decided to live untethered for a year and surrender and see what happens. He's like, it's been the most amazing life-changing experience. So I want to go learn that secret and dig into that. Maybe that's the next chapter. And I think there's another pilgrimage. We're due for another pilgrimage to go see Mickey again.
I read The Surrender Experiment first, which is the story of his life. And I found that I think if I had come across The Untethered Soul first, I probably would not have gotten as much out of it. Because in my mind, it's kind of like his example and then the manual.
Yeah.
And The Untethered Soul is like the manual. But having read The Surrender Experiment first, it was kind of the example. So it gave me the inspiration to get through the other one, The Untethered Soul. And so I like that order. When people ask me, I always say, read The Surrender Experiment first and then go to The Untethered Soul. So if anybody's out there and listening and needing to let go a little bit more in your life, if you feel like you're holding on too tightly and you have a lot of anxiety, those were seminal books for me. I During that year where I was going through this recovery from my burnout, I developed 5 practices. And I call them practices because they are practices. There's nothing perfect about them. There's no mastery. They're not rules. These are things that I do that I try to get better at every time. And I mess them up and I go back. And the first one is talk to myself. First one is literally journaling, writing, running, whatever it is, just some kind of inner dialogue that I'm having with myself so that I can reflect. The second one is let go. And that is very much inspired by several coaches that I worked with and by the work of Michael Singer. The third one is make things happen. And that's almost the opposite of let go. But I think as entrepreneurs, we get so much joy from shaping the world around us. And what I found is that the order matters. If I let go first, but then set an intention and try to make something happen, that experience is delightful. That experience is the world unfolding. Everything that goes against me, I don't really pay attention to. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, let it go. You know what I mean? See what happens next. And I don't even need the resilience anymore, right? Because that resilience now comes from a place of peace rather than a place of grind, right? It's a different kind of resilience altogether. And then once I had those 3 locked in, then I focus, connect with others. My vision only becomes better when I share it with others, when I let them influence it, when, you know what I mean? The more people I bring into everything, the more joy I get out of it. And then the last one is keep things simple, because life can get complicated very fast. And it's been really important for me every so often to go, okay, what are all the things I can trim away again and simplify it again? And that practice of simplifying has served me well as all.
That's awesome.
I want to kind of maybe see if we could go full circle and look at the lie we started off with, which was there is such thing as enough, and more isn't exactly what you should be aiming for, right? So if we leave the listeners with that and invite them to maybe join us on the next pilgrimage, if they want, they can reach out through routinerebel.com.
I think they could be a lot of fun.
It'll be great. Ab, thank you for doing the podcast. Thank you for being on today. And I really appreciate your time. Thank you, brother.
Right on, brother. Stavros, thank you.
Thank you for listening to Wednesdays Off. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you're interested in building a life and business with more freedom, intention, and community, visit routinerebel.com to learn more. Until next time, keep challenging the status quo and keep building your version of Wednesdays Off.